God, the news is so depressing recently. I really need to play a game to get my mind off all the politics and everything that's going around. I mean, I could play Mario and just go around collecting moons. I could build my own city in Animal Crossing. Or I could try to take down a billionaire-owned corporation that's destroying the world of its resources. Yeah, that one.
This may be a shock to hear, but I actually own consoles not made by Nintendo. Obviously, I'm a bigger fanboy of Nintendo, seeing as only about 2 or 3 of my videos talk about non-Nintendo games, but that doesn't mean I can't enjoy playing PlayStation or Xbox. I grew up playing mostly exclusively Nintendo games, so I was playing the Nintendo 64, GameCube, Wii, Game Boy Advance, and DS. Those were my childhood. I didn't even get a non-Nintendo console until I was in middle school when my brother and I got an Xbox 360 for Christmas. But that was pretty much just Halo and Call of Duty, not any groundbreaking or life-changing experiences. Don't get me wrong, those games can still be so much fun to play, even with those racist white kids with the crappy mics on voice chat. If you didn't get called a racist, ethnic, or homophobic slur while playing Modern Warfare 2, did you really even live? Xbox and PlayStation games can be great, but I gotta be honest, 9 times out of 10 it feels like the developers care more about graphics than the actual gameplay and storyline nowadays. I'm not gonna say any names in particular because I don't want any crazy fans hating me for dissing a game they like, but you know what I'm talking about. It wasn't always like that though. Back in the 90s when Sony began its rivalry with Nintendo, the original PlayStation had some incredible games. Games that to this day people have heard of even if they haven't even played a PlayStation. They had Crash Bandicoot, Spyro the Dragon, Metal Gear Solid, and of course weird-ass games like Ape Escape and Parappa the Rapper. Every day I wake up and think this game was just a fever dream, yet it's still here. But one game in particular stands out above the rest in one of the largest RPG series of all time. Final Fantasy began as a Japan exclusive on the NES, and I always just saw it as one of those Japanese RPGs I will never get into. Kind of like how I felt about Fire Emblem, but without all the Smash fan hatred in the background. Even with my very limited knowledge of the series, I still always heard that Final Fantasy VII was the best of them all. And being a kid at the time, I just saw a spiky-haired anime character with a giant sword and thought, how have I never played this? I finally played it in around 2012 when I was 15, and if any of you have seen my top 10 favorite games video, you know exactly how I feel about FF7. It is fucking incredible. If I played this when I was little instead of Zelda games, this could easily be my #1 game ever with that nostalgic attachment. And when I found out they were going to remake it with graphics that didn't look like dog puke, you know I had to be the first in line to buy it. As a Nintendo fanatic, this feels like sinning, but sinning has never felt so good.
I own a total of 3 PlayStation games. Horizon Zero Dawn because a friend didn't want it, but I don't really care. And then I also got Persona 5 because it's an actually great game. And then the entire reason that I actually own a PS4. Today, we are taking a look at the Final Fantasy VII Remake.
This remake was released on April 10th, 2020, almost 23 years after the original in 1997, and was developed by Square Enix. Hints at a remake came all the way back in the early 2000s when Square announced a remake for the PlayStation 2, but nothing ever came of it. Demand continued to grow at E3 2005 when a tech demo of FF7's opening was shown for the PlayStation 3, but Square continuously denied the development of a remake, even as the 10-year anniversary passed in 2007. Time continued to pass with no plan for a remake until Final Fantasy producer Shinichi Hashimoto brought the idea up to a few of the original creators of FF7, who believed if they waited any longer, it may be too late for them to work on the project. They believed it didn't feel right passing it on to the next generation when it was their original creation. And so, the remake began full production in late 2015. Although many fans wanted a simple one-to-one remaster with upscaled graphics, the team realized much of the game was dated and decided on a full-blown remake from the ground up. This way they could attract old and new fans alike with such a nostalgic game with a much grander world, new story aspects, and new modern gameplay. And I gotta say, I am really happy the original designers for the game came back. Only they truly know what everything in the original was supposed to look like, and they captured this world more perfectly than I could have possibly imagined. I mean, just look at the opening. You can actually tell Aerith is looking at Mako flowing out of pipes instead of a weird green glow on a gray blob. The game opens the same as the original with a rebellion group called Avalanche infiltrating a Mako reactor base with the help of the main character, Cloud. You're teamed up with 4 characters named Biggs, Wedge, Jesse, and the best character in the game, Barrett. This mission is more or less the game's way to teach you how to play because the fighting mechanics are similar to the original, but not exactly the same. The original was much more of a classic turn-based RPG with selecting moves for each character to attack with, while the remake is much more action-oriented. You can still select different moves to perform, but you need to do basic attacks to charge up in order to select those more powerful attacks. These differ between the characters because they obviously all have different weapons and are all used differently in their own ways. I really want to see someone try to beat this game with only basic attacks. They probably still wouldn't be finished by the time part 2 of this remake comes out in 2030, but I'd respect the effort. As much as everyone knows I love turn-based RPGs, I gotta be honest and say I actually enjoy the combat in this remake over the original. I love the need to strategize and make every move count in those games, but this still has that, but also incorporates more real-time action into the fights to make them more engaging. You can still perform all the same attacks with weapons or magic, but much more fluidly, and I think it's a nice change, so the original and remake weren't exactly the same. Plus, you need to manually dodge and switch characters on the fly, which also requires strategy on how to fight your opponent. It does take a bit to get used to at the start, but after the first chapter, it's easy to master. Or you can do what any normal casual player would do and just button mash to win, which can work in most cases. There are a few problems with the combat, but my main gripe is just aerial attacks are absolutely awful. The Helitrooper enemies in this game are absolutely atrocious, and they live up to their names of being absolute hell. There are a few adjustments they could make in a part 2, like maybe make it so that you can adjust your materia mid-battle. I don't know exactly how they would do that, but maybe just make it cost some ATB charges. And also, Assess should not be a materia. That should be an ability that you just unlock and then can always use. It just completely wastes a spot that you could actually use for fighting. I love this chapter because it's so action-filled but still does a great job introducing you to all the characters. One of my few problems with the original was how little you actually learn about some of the characters like Biggs and Jesse, but the remake went all out and fully fleshed out their backstories. Even Barrett, who's amazing in the original, is improved even more, especially his role as the leader of the group. They give Barrett such a strong speech after they destroy the reactor, showing how deeply he cares about the others and will always have their back when no one else will. Just some of the small new lines and details they threw in, along with incredible voice acting, gives Barrett that strong-willed but loving personality. The voice acting as a whole is some of the best I've ever heard, actually. There's very few characters whose voices don't sound like they fit, and really it's just because they're too deep. Like Rude's voice is way deeper than I ever would have imagined. I always just kind of pictured him sounding like Pitbull, but that could just be because they're both bald. The second chapter is probably the best part of any game I've ever played at setting the tone of a situation. Sure, the original kind of shows you how the reactor explosion impacted the sector, but just seeing the devastation between the burning buildings and chaotic civilians, this actually made me feel guilty for fulfilling the mission. Although it was technically Shinra's fault, but the characters don't know that. The chapter even has the greatest cutscene that no one expected ever, with Sephiroth walking through the flames and haunting Cloud. It's such a cool idea, plus Cloud continuously has visions of the future to give great foreshadowing for what's to come. This is great to give newcomers a small taste of what's to come, but it's a kick in the balls to all the veterans who know what's coming.
Seriously though, if you haven't played the original FF7, I highly recommend you do it before playing this game, because otherwise you will not understand any of these visions or tons of plot points later on. In fact, you probably also want to play Crisis Core, Dirge of Cerberus, and watch Advent Children for reasons I won't explain to avoid spoilers for you.
Chapter 3 then introduces us to the most unnatural bodily designed woman of all time with Tifa. I'll just say it, her boobs defy physics, and I think we can all appreciate that. Tifa is the only person Cloud knows from his childhood, and the relationship is much closer than the rest of Avalanche since he's just a hired mercenary to them. She's the only person Cloud opens up to at all, until a few chapters later, but we'll get there in a bit. Cloud teams up with Tifa to solve some people's problems in the slum to build his reputation. You don't have to do any of these missions and can immediately progress the story, but why the hell are you playing an RPG if you're not going to do the side quests? This is like 80% of what makes RPGs great. Doing random shit to pass the time and basically giving the middle finger to the main story is why it took me about 100 hours to beat this game. The side quests don't give you any big or powerful weapon, but it does influence one cutscene later in the game, which is one of the more emotional moments in the game, so I do recommend doing them for that reason alone. Also, since we just talked about Chapter 3, I need to quickly mention how Marlene is the most adorable girl I have ever seen in my life, and the voice actor is literally perfect. The next 4 chapters then fly by in the blink of an eye. Chapter 4 is just a bike chase to infiltrate a Shinra base after robbing Jesse's parents, all while Jesse continuously hits on Cloud. I promise it makes sense. Chapter 5 is the beginning of the mission to blow up Mako Reactor 5 by following a dog painting's nose on the railway, ending with a fight against a giant robot crab with one of the best themes in the entire game. Chapter 6 is turning the giant lights off on the plate to move just one platform to reach Biggs and get grappling guns. And Chapter 7 is just taking parts out of the airbuster before you fight it, because otherwise you will supposedly get destroyed. Although, I never really found it that difficult, even when I didn't remove any parts. The explosion splits Cloud from Tifa and Barrett before he falls down to the Sector 5 slums where, oh my god, I have been waiting the entire game for this moment. We finally get to meet Aerith. Yes, I know we met her in Chapter 2 for like 5 minutes, but you don't even learn her name until now. I was so happy to finally see her, and then immediately they throw this vision at you. Fuck You, Square. Wait, oh yeah, Reno's here. Never mind, I'll forgive you this one time. Reno is not only exactly what I pictured, but also has an incredible battle theme. You know what? I don't need to compliment the music on every battle because every single battle theme is amazing. Also, I love how the bosses are actually difficult and even assessing them doesn't directly tell you how to beat them. It just gives you a tiny little hint and forces you to actually adapt and learn as any game should. Almost every boss will straight up kick your ass if you're not prepared, or even if you are prepared, they will kick your ass out hard. Some of the fights in that mode are complete bullshit, but I appreciate the challenge. Then these plot ghosts come out of nowhere and force the plot to move forward with no reason. You will see this a lot. After Reno leaves, we get one of the best scenes in the game, jumping across rooftops with Aerith with such a beautiful backdrop, plus Aerith actually swears.
You worry too much. I'm not some princess who needs to be coddled. Shit.
No, I didn't bleep that because everyone needs to appreciate it. Aside from Barrett, Aerith is by far the next best character in the game. She's so funny, outgoing, and pushes Cloud's buttons in just the right way, but listens and understands him better than anyone else. I'm not gonna start a war over shipping who Cloud should be with, but I personally will always believe it should be Aerith. She is perfect for him, and you just see that bonds between them grow bigger and bigger between the next few chapters. Cloud is such a stoic and emotionless guy with only small hints of personality with Tifa, but he entirely changes once he meets Aerith. You can see this a lot between his facial expressions and bodily gestures, but one scene in particular that really shows his change is when Aerith is speaking to the flowers. Aerith doesn't want Cloud to think she's weird since he just won't believe her, but Cloud insists she tells him anyway. Just this tiny detail shows more care and compassion than anything before this, especially when he tells the flowers to learn to talk to her at the end.
This remake's version of Cloud has such a level of character development that I don't think I ever have seen.
Their bond just grows so much more in Chapter 9 when Cloud leaves her house in the middle of the night because her mom told him to leave, but Aerith teleports across town before he leaves. You were literally right outside my door, forcing me to stay in my room if I so much as touched a fucking bucket, and now you're here 1 minute later?
How?
Well, I'll accept it. I mean, I get to travel with Aerith some more, so that makes me happy. I am going to kill you, Square. Aerith escorts Cloud to the Sector 7 entrance for the collapsed expressway where she tries to give him a high five, but Cloud is a dumbass. Twice. But he eventually tries to reciprocate, but then Aerith doesn't expect it and pulls away. Pain. At least they high five at the end because I could not handle another blue ball. Cloud and Aerith then have a heart-to-heart talk at the Sector 7 entrance where Aerith mentions Cloud is the same rank as the first man she ever loved. I'm not gonna say anything else to spare you from spoilers, but just know that first love is a very big deal. Also, I know a lot of people think Cloud was just being nice to Aerith in the previous chapter and didn't have any feelings towards her, but I just have to direct you to this scene. First, the look on his face. Second, he says he will travel all the way back to Sector 5 with her just to make sure she's safe, even though they just made this trip to his destination. If that isn't pure Cloud Strife love, I don't know what is.
Give it an hour.
Cloud then sees Tifa heading to Don Corneo's place in Wall Market, and Aerith convinces him to go after her where they find out that she is in a showcase for his next wife and they decide to save her. Only girls are allowed in, so they need to get a nomination for Aerith from Madam M. And after a quick hand massage orgasm that cost more than Cloud was paid to commit a terrorist attack at the beginning of the game, she says she will and will make a dress for her if they win in the Coliseum. This is just a quick 3 battles to win $1 million, nothing major, until a bonus match is announced for no reason, but how bad can it really be?
Enter the Hellhound!
Of all the enemies to make a major boss fight in the remake, I don't think anyone ever could have predicted the most random enemy that many people thought wouldn't even make it into the remake in the first place. I mean, it's literally just a fucking house. I want to know what kind of drugs the developers were on when they made this decision because I want some. No joke, this is one of the more difficult fights in the game, but by far one of the most fun too. Aerith then gets her dress, which is based on how many side quests you completed in Chapter 8, and you better have done all of them because god damn is that red dress fine. This is the moment Cloud fell in love. But Aerith can't keep the spotlight all to herself. Cloud needs to look pretty too so he can enter Don Corneo's mansion. And my god, never in my life have I been so happy watching a cutscene in my entire life. Andrea Rodea has an entire Vegas dance performance where he forces Cloud to dance with him on stage, which is a legitimate minigame, although all it does affect is Aerith's responses. Cloud, all I'm gonna say is you are a damn liar. Literally in Chapter 7 you said, I don't dance. Yet here you are moving your ass for Aerith like it's your job. Cloud is then put in a dress in front of everyone with Aerith getting a little bit too excited. Andrea then says trans rights and Cloud and Aerith head off to save Tifa, which results in the single greatest line in video game history.
Oh my god, that makeup! And that dress!
Nailed it, I know, thank you. Moving on.
You did nail it, Cloud. You did. Don Corneo then proves he's just as ugly, creepy, and fat as I remembered, and I would not have it any other way.
Ooh, you got a mouth on you. I'm gonna enjoy breaking it in.
This game is rated T, by the way. I can accept all the swearing, but this is where I feel like this game should be rated M. Aerith and Tifa then break Cloud out after escaping themselves and force Corneo to tell them why he was snooping around Avalanche with the best threat ever.
I'll cut him off.
I'll rip them off.
Or I'll smash them.
Same dialogue as the original and just as perfect. Corneo says Shinra is planning to drop the entire upper plate on the Sector 7 slums and then drops them into the sewer so they can't stop it. The three then need to escape the sewers and a ghost train yard where Aerith proves she wants Cloud while Tifa wants to kill her before finally reaching Sector 7. This is without a doubt the saddest part of the game because you have to watch both Biggs and Jessie die in your arms. Kind of, sort of, not really. Before reaching the top where you can't stop the plate from being dropped and you escape on a cable wire while people below you are dying, including my bro Wedge! Oh yeah, and Kate Sith shows up. Why? The immediate reaction is why I say Barrett is the best character change between the original and the remake. Sure, he does scream for everyone in the original, but that closer relationship wasn't established as it was here. Plus the voice acting is incredible, hearing him cry over thinking his daughter was just killed. Superb voice acting again, I cannot compliment it enough. Marlene of course is still alive, and the three head back to Sector 7 to look for any survivors, and Wedge is alive too, which just... thank God. Wedge is a bro, and I feel like half of the time I see him is just me worrying over his well-being. Tifa and Barrett save him from these experiments that are actually people, which Cloud isn't surprised by because, well, you know. They head back to Aerith's house, and this is where that super emotional cutscene I mentioned earlier takes place. There's 3 you can get, and I'll just go ahead and say it, Barrett's is by far the worst. I'm sorry, you're the best character in the game, but this is just a solid cutscene at best, while the other 2 are spectacular. Tifa breaks down crying about everything happening and Cloud actually shows compassion and hugs her, albeit after like 15 seconds of awkward crying on his chest. And then in the other, Cloud has a dream of Aerith where he tells her he's worried about her and she tries to spare him any pain and says,
But whatever happens, you can't fall in love with me.
Too late. Cloud says he's coming to save her, and then the 3 of them begin to head to the Shinra building.
The ending of the game heavily differs from the original in terms of plot, so I'm going to avoid talking about it because I think you actually need to experience it for yourself instead of just hearing it from me. But I do want to mention a few things from the ending, so if you want to avoid spoilers, click on this time right now. This is going to be your only warning. Click it because I do not want you to be spoiled.
This is one of the best looking cutscenes I have ever seen. Why the f did they kill Barrett and bring him back with literal plot armor? I mean, I'm okay with it, but it unnecessarily messed with my emotions. Rufus is like 10 times more badass than before. They remade the exact scene with Zack from Crisis Core and I almost cried. Also, how the f is Zack still alive? Is it an alternate timeline or are they actually changing the entire history? I need to know because if they can save Zack, I better be able to save Aerith too or I will never forgive them. Oh yeah, and Biggs is somehow alive and Jessie might be too. Kind of takes away the impact from their death scenes, but I do not care and I'm so happy they're alive. The credit song Hollow is beautiful and also almost made me cry. And last but not least, Sephiroth's lips are too realistic and make me very uncomfortable. Okay, I think that's everything I needed to mention. This might be the best remake I have ever played. I know many people have mixed feelings about the changes near the end, but I absolutely love it and am so excited to see where they take the story in part 2. I know part 2 won't be out for at least 2 years and probably closer to like 4, but I will be playing it the second it comes out. Every character has so much more depth and personality than the original, which is saying a lot because Final Fantasy VII has some incredible characters. Although I swear to God, if you don't let me change the future after this entire game was about changing the destiny of the original game, I will never trust you again. You know what I'm talking about. The one scene we see a vision of over and over and over again, even during the final boss, we better be able to change it. And I know I mentioned it multiple times, but the soundtrack is near perfection. I am a massive video game OST fanatic, and this is one of the best I've ever heard. But overall, this remake is also near perfection, and I feel like I keep referencing my top 10 favorite games video very recently, but this was sitting at number 6. I actually replayed the original after that video to prepare for the remake, and I think I underestimated how much I loved it because I think it should have been closer to like 3 or 4. But this remake? I'm gonna try to wait to place this game until I play a part 2 and a possible part 3, but I'm just gonna say this is making a very strong case to do the impossible and beat out Skyward Sword for number 1. I know, I never thought I'd see the day, but that should tell you how much I just love this game. Unless we get a Skyward Sword remake, in which case FF7 stands no chance.
This is going to sound like a crazy statement, but I highly recommend buying a PS4 just to play this game. It might seem like a waste of money if you're not going to play anything else, but honestly, this game is worth it. There's not one flaw in this game. I mean, they even let you still take the stairs instead of the elevator just to hear Barrett complain the entire time.
You have got to be shitting me. You can stop if you want. You can even say it's for me. Worst route ever. Give me a suicidal last stand. At least that'd have an end. This sucks. I want to go back. Another day, another struggle. Climbing stairs, so much trouble.
As Andrea Rodeo would say, perfection.